Have you ever handed off a project only to get something completely different back? Your team isn't the problem. Your kickoff is. Most miscommunication happens really before the work ever begins. So today we're going to unpack the clarity kickoff. It's a 5-minute leadership habit that stops confusion before it even starts, and it's going to build trust before a single task is done. When we take a moment to clarify at the start, we accelerate everything else that follows. This is the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast, and I'm your host, John Espinosa. I help you retain and hire your best employees by building your high-performance teams. So today, we are going to give you a repeatable method that stops rework. It stops stress, and we're going to do that by creating clarity before action. So let's dig into the content for today. The first thing that we're going to talk about is this clarity kickoff. And the clarity kickoff has saved me days, not hours, not minutes, days on rework, specifically on projects, large projects, small projects. It really doesn't matter. And from my project management background, the kickoff meeting is one of the most important, if not the most important, things that you do in a project. Large, small, long duration, short duration, high priority, low priority. That kickoff is going to set us up for success. And I'm going to give you some strategy here on how to lead that clarity kickoff meeting. Before I get into that, if you are subscribed to this channel, thank you very much. I appreciate all of your support. If you're a new listener to the Go Be Great community, or you found us just scrolling along YouTube or whatever, however you found us, find that subscribe button. Do me a favor, click on it. It means the world to me. Thank you very much for taking the time to better yourself. So let's get into this strategy, because one of the first questions that I like to ask my team is, what does success look like? And how will we know when we get there? It seems like a simple question, but in the end, really what it identifies is, when will we know we've gotten to the end of the project? And how will we know that we've met really all the project objectives? That's the simple question meets all of those, checks all of those boxes. It gets everybody on the one singing from the same sheet of music, and we're on down the road executing that project. So one thing that during the kickoff meeting, now we're in the kickoff meeting, we got our team, whether it's a virtual meeting or we're all sitting around the table, maybe you have different department heads, maybe you're at, the C-suite level, or you're at the team level, whether it's a team of 10 or it's a team of 2, whatever that looks like. That question will get you a lot of feedback. And that's really what we're wanting here out of all of this is feedback, clarification, feedback, clarification, feedback. We're going to go back and forth between those two concepts all throughout this episode. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is assumptions. So stick through to the episode end, because you're not going to want to miss that part, because those assumptions, they can come back to bite us. So here, one of the ways that we can achieve clarity during this kickoff meeting is to ask the other team members what they heard, and how, or better yet, what they understood, right? And I wrote down here, what have you heard or understood in this kickoff meeting? And I will go around the room to every single team member that is on that call. If the entire team isn't there, I will delay the kickoff meeting. That's how important kickoff meetings have become for projects that I'm leading or that maybe I'm delegating. It's even more important if I'm delegating the project. And we'll get into the 3 questions that you're going to ask to make sure to check that box that you're ready to delegate. But first, you're going to ask everybody what they heard or what they understood. And I want you to think of this as alignment. It's going to come off as interrogation. So I don't want you to point, right, to everybody around the room. What did you hear? And get that stern, you see the difference there? Just simply go around the room. Okay, I'm going to do a clarity check. What did you hear or what did you understand as far as success? What does success look like and how will we know what we got when we got there? That's the question that we just asked. So go around the room and make sure that everybody understands what success looks like. That's important. Think of this like if I'm just navigating, I'm out on a hike and I have a map. There's 3 teams. We're all going to the same destination, but we start at different points. How will we know when we get there? Because one team necessarily isn't talking to the next team because we've all started at different spots. And what does success look like? Does that mean when we've gotten there or we've survived or maybe we've hydrated and we haven't lost anybody? Everybody makes it. The entire team makes it to the final spot, meetup spot. That's what I'm talking about here with projects. We think about, we assume that everybody knows what success looks like. It's just when all the deliverables are done, when maybe we've come to the end of our time frame, the duration of the project, or better yet, when we've exhausted all of the money or the resources in the project. A lot of times that's when people are like, yeah, that's when we know we're done, is when we don't have any money to work anymore. So it's important to really frame that question as alignment. I want to make sure that we're all in alignment before we leave the meeting today. Don't come at it from like an interrogatory, an interrogative perspective. And then last but not least, I want to make sure that everybody understands very clearly what the next steps are. When we leave this kickoff meeting, what's the next step? So I will write it up on the board if you got a board, or I'll type it in the chat. It's an important action item that everybody needs to understand because in the end, if you think the next step is we're going to wait 3 weeks until we get the money to start, when actually we're starting tomorrow in the planning phase, and then we'll get the money in 3 weeks, but we're not going to sit idle. Those are 2 different interpretations. So the last thing that I end a kickoff meeting with is, what are the next steps? Who has the ball? Who has the action? And then what does that look like? How often we're going to meet? What are the check-ins look like? Is there a shared site? Those are all like the tactical things that you can end that meeting with. But a lot of times, what is the next step? And be very clear. So that's the clarity kickoff. That's the most important part of starting a project. Now we're going to talk about, we've gotten the kickoff. Everybody's clear on what the next steps, what success looks like. How will we know when we get there? But before we move forward, I want to make sure that we ask 3 questions. 3 questions before I go out and delegate a task. And, once we've built this rhythm, once we understand what the rhythm looks like, now we're going to build in these clarity questions. And these clarity questions focus around 3 very simple things. I'll go over them and then we'll go back in and discuss each one individually. The first one is our goal. The second one is our guardrails. And the third one's going to be, what's that go signal? So let's start with the goal. What are we trying to achieve? And again, a lot of this is common sense. It's just not common practice. We rush through a lot of these kickoffs. I can't tell you how many times that I schedule a kickoff meeting and everybody's eyes rolls in the back of their head. You've been there, right? Your eyes have rolled in the back of your head. They may still be there. So you got to slow down. I'm going to encourage you to really just slow down. And you may have to start the meeting with some type of statement. I understand not everybody appreciates a kickoff meeting. From my experience, these kickoff meetings are crucial to the success of this project. It can be very simple like that. And then we're going to get into these 3 questions. And the reason why we're asking each one of these questions is because before I delegate something, I want to make sure that we're clear on the goal. We understand what our guardrails are. If a decision needs to be made, empower them to make a decision up to a certain point. Maybe it meets a certain monetary threshold. Like when you start spending monies above $5,000, we got to come back and have a conversation. Anything below $5,000, go forth and conquer type situation, right? And then the go signal. So when and how do we start? But let's go back to the goal, because we got to go back there. What's the destination and what are our success metrics? So what are we trying to achieve? Is it a cost savings? Is it efficiency to a process? Are we looking to streamline maybe our sales calls or the production of something, right? A widget or something that's going out the door? Are we looking to maybe expand our customer base? Those types of things, lead generation, whatever that looks like, I want to make sure what that goal is that we're trying to achieve. And then remember back to the question, what does success look like? Okay, let's work backwards and come up with some really identifiable, clear metrics to know when we're progressing and how we're progressing, if we need to speed up, if we're ahead of schedule or we're behind schedule, because those are big questions that leadership is going to ask. And if you're that small business, I want to know, are we ahead of schedule? Are we burning down more money than we thought we were going to burn before this, before target one? Because then we're going to may have to go back and pull off some resources. There's a lot of things that are going on. So that goal question, where are we going, is very, very important. What's the destination and what are those success metrics? So let's talk about the second one here, guardrails. And guardrails are, what are those limits, right? And when we talk about limits, we talk about authority, who has the authority to make decisions. Scope creep kills projects. I have been in way more projects that have just gotten way out of scope because of scope creep that I can even count on my fingers and toes. And I'll probably have to borrow your finger and toes, because scope creep, it burns resources up. It confuses people. It really stalls projects. That's all I can say. So what's the scope? What are the guardrails? And then timing. How do we know when we're on time? When do we know when we're falling behind time? So those three things are just examples. There's other things, other limits that we're going to set. But for the most part, what are those guardrails? And how, as a team lead, or maybe you're delegating this, or as a business owner or a leader, what does that look like? And who are you giving authority to? Do you have the authority? Are you delegating that authority? How do you know when you're getting out of scope? Does everyone understand, going back to the goal of the project? Like, what is the goal? Because anything outside of that goal, that's creep. And if we are creeping more than we're achieving the goal, aligning to, that alignment piece into execution, then we're going to get off the rails, and pretty soon everybody's going to be going in different directions. So that guardrails, that's number 2. And then number 3, and this one I have written down as go signal. I call it go signal, but it's when and how do we start? A lot of times projects stall before they even get going. Back to, what are the next steps? If we don't identify those next steps, the project, we lead the meeting. We got to clear up, what a success looks like. How do we know we got there? Check, check, check. Who is doing what? Who has the ball? And then 2 weeks go by and nothing's happened. And we're wondering what the heck's going on. We thought everybody was clear. Well, this go signal, that is going to identify and be specific. We talked about specific clarification. Go back 2 episodes ago and listen to that episode, because, put dates, put times. If you're a global in a global market, you want to make sure that you have the right time zone. Make sure that people understand we have some type of timeline. And here we're going to eliminate hesitation by establishing a clear timeline. We don't hesitate anymore. We know when things get kicked off. If you got a waterfall project, especially, you got to know when something ends, whatever that next task is, needs to begin. So there has to be some type of trigger there. There has to be some type of communication there. Again, we want to eliminate hesitation by this go signal. And then last, conflicting priorities. What's the priority? If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So especially if you are managing multiple projects or you're a resource on multiple projects, Like, how do I know what project trumps the other project? Because I'm doing maybe subject matter expert work, or I'm writing up contracts, or I'm doing the training piece. That's my world. I'm in training, and so I may have 3 or 4 different projects going that require training. Some may slip, some may be ahead of schedule. So I have to make sure that we align the resources to execute the training before the rollout or the implementation of that system or that process. So a lot of time, what's the priority? Eliminate those conflicting priorities, and we do that through the go signal. So those 3 again: the goal, the guardrails, and the go signal. If your team can answer each one of those 3 questions to your satisfaction, guess what? You're done. Delegate. You don't have to micromanage. Maybe get into some meetings, ask for updates, whatever that looks like in your organization. If you're a small organization, it may just be a weekly huddle. It may be a daily huddle if it's a short project. If you're in a larger organization, maybe updating a project management plan or a spreadsheet of other projects. So that way I'm not pinging you what the update is, because when people ask me, when my leadership asks me where we're at on certain things, the last thing that I want to do is go and bug somebody that already is working on 3 projects. So what does that look like? So the micromanagement piece can basically just go away. So let's talk about the last one. And I mentioned this earlier. We're going to surface assumptions early. That's the last topic that we're going to talk about today. And remember, why do we keep getting confused on projects? Why does your team keep getting confused? Because they're assuming they know what the next steps are. They're assuming what they know what the goal is of the project. They are assuming they know maybe what the guardrails are. So how do we get ahead of that? Well, one, we're going to make the invisible visible. This is like a Houdini trick for everybody out there, right? We're going to take what is invisible and we're going to make sure that everybody has visibility and clarity around that specific task, that specific action, that specific decision, whatever the X is. That's what we're going to make sure is visible to everybody. So I want you to ask, what's one assumption we might be making? And then sit back. You can even go around the room again. This is maybe one of those times where you got to go slow yourself down, because this is something that normally will happen at the end of the kickoff meeting, or maybe this is a follow-on meeting, right, with the individual teams. If you got multiple teams on a project, whatever it looks like, before you go forward, like, let's just go around the room. What's assumption that we're making here? Let's just give me one. And that will allow everybody to get out that confusion. Yeah, I assume that we're going to be able to get this done a lot faster than what that project plan says. You know what? Tell me more. Why do you see that? And then they'll go into that explanation. Or you might get the vice versa. I'm assuming that we're going to blow the budget before we even get halfway through. Well, that's interesting. Tell me more. Those are opportunities for us to get out all of those assumptions within the project. And here, as leaders, like, this is one thing that I think people, when others start like telling us their assumptions, it can be perceived as they're pushing back. Specifically, like the example that I used about the budget. Well, I think we're going to blow the budget, boss. Well, who are you to say that? Why are you pushing back on my decision? I'm the one who put this project plan together, right? And so we got to have a little bit of vulnerability. We have to sit back and we got to lean in and we have to get curious here, because in the end, we have to encourage pushback as a sign of engagement. Because if we are getting pushback, people are engaging in the conversation. Now, if you get the same person always pushing back, hopefully you're going to learn, and you're going to already have those responses framed up front to where you go over them and there's really no question. So that's a learning opportunity for us as leaders. But for the most part, let's encourage pushback as engagement. Yeah, go ahead. I want to know. Shoot holes in the project plan. Let's get it all out now, because once we get going, we're going to be going in so many different directions that this may be our only opportunity, one, that you get the entire team together, because they may be busy working on other projects. Maybe they're not your resource, so they're an external resource, and you only get them for a certain window of opportunity. So you got them all together on this kickoff meeting. Let's get it all out. Put it all in the open. And then we're going to model curiosity. We're going to ask questions like, what could derail us before we even get started? That's a great question I love to ask. Well, maybe one of the most important parts of that project or that effort, they're double booked or they're triple booked. So now that's an important thing to know, because if 2 weeks into the project, we're already behind because we triple booked a resource and we didn't know, that's pretty important, right? So what can derail us before we even get started? And then we're going to celebrate clarifying questions over speed. We're going to allow people to ask questions, and then we're going to do that through just slowing down. Slow down, get everything out in the open during that kickoff meeting before we get going. We have to go slow to go far sometimes. The fast, rabbit doesn't always win the race. They may get the project done pretty quick, but now the rework and everything that we, glossed over or just really went by, now we're having to create other projects to fix those. So one application here that I like to coach on is, let's name one thing we should clarify before we move on. I put that in my project notes. It's in my template that I use. All of this stuff is a template. That's a good best practice for me. So this is a clarity kickoff template. I put all of the 3 things that we talked about today. We talked about 1, how to lead that clarity kickoff. So how to open that meeting, right? The second thing, the 3 questions that we're going to ask before delegation. Those questions are going to center around goals. They're going to center around guardrails and then the go signal. And then last but not least, we are going to get the assumptions out early. So one thing that, I really want to emphasize here is lead the clarity kickoff to align before we get into execution mode. And one reflection that I'd love to hear some feedback on, put these in the comments, please. Where are you assuming clarity instead of confirming it? And then who needs a clarity kickoff from you this week? Try that on, put it down in the comments, because when leaders clarify before action, they eliminate chaos over execution. I believe in you. Go be great. Talk to everyone on the next episode. Bye-bye.